Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you so much, and welcome to Sidebar in person. I hope this is not the very first, this is the very first. I hope it is not the very last time that we meet like this face to face. And I hope in this coming week that we're all happy and we're all relaxed again and we are all breathing a sigh of relief, because I don't know about you, but this last, month, but especially this last week with all the texts that I've been getting, with all of the emails that I've been getting, that it has made my life even more stressful than it already is. And so thank you very, very much for everybody coming today. And the formal introduction that I always do, I always tell the guys I'm never used to cameras, so I always have to look at my paper, even though I know this is the former Bexar County DA, Nico LaHood, who is trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group. And thank you so much for giving us, or I guess giving me, my entertainment when you have these really big cases and you win them. I'm like, wait a second, that wasn't supposed to happen, or how did that happen? All of your cases are very interesting and wonderful to follow, because it's like a movie to me. And George Araujo, who I met unexpectedly through Nico and has brought knowledge and just like unreal information to all of us. I hope that you feel the same way I do. He's a former chemist and pharmaceutical researcher and director, and just basic brainiology expert. So if you are looking for any information about what page something's on, he'll have that information. Even if it's from 100 years ago.
Yeah, I don't Google things, I Araujo things.
I know,
so
I know.
Just call him, dear George.
And we recorded a show to be on the air for Sidebar, but one of the things that I don't know if I'm embarrassed that I watched the entire thing, but I watched the Madison Square Garden rally, and even if you thought to yourself you were for Trump, as an American, I got goosebumps, because I thought, isn't this the way it's supposed to be? Aren't people supposed to be proud to be Americans? And feel free to talk, and let me tell you, if you've been to New York, you know the attitude, you know the air of what it is to be in New York, and I thought that was a rally that took courage.
Well, yeah, you notice Trump's rallies, and let's talk about the Madison Square Garden one versus Harris's rallies. You have a rally that's name calling and doom and gloom, and people are, J-Lo's crying. What the hell she's crying about? There's nothing in her life
Ben Affleck.
Besides her 14 marriages. But and then you have this. I don't know what happened to the joy and the good vibes and all that stuff, but the joy and the good vibes ended pretty quickly. That was kind of just a normal
convention.
Well, right after, once they realized that they were screwed with having her, but Trump's rallies, look, it was. Now, look, I've heard the comments, I think Megyn Kelly, and it's illegitimate. It was too much of a bromance, and it was too man structured. Tulsi Gabbard was there, but I get it. I think that's a legitimate criticism. But I think you sense the love of the country. Mm-hmm. And what Trump is selling, as he's sprinting to the end, he's making for us, we make closing arguments. And in a campaign, my brother Mark's here. I'm going to talk about him here in a little while. But you make closing arguments in your campaign. You're sprinting to the finish line, and his closing arguments is what can his administration do for us. Her closing arguments is how bad and how much he sucks. But you've been in office this whole time. So you're seeing just a cultural shift. And then for me, as an observer, objectively, because you know me, I try to call balls and strikes. You know where I stand. I'm very open about my faith. I'm very open about my politics, about my advocacy, but I'm an equal opportunity offender. And I try to do it respectfully and with logic and data behind it. But you see where they're at, and you see the culture that they think they're going to bring to this country. And she's been in office. He hasn't. So she's running as if she hasn't been in office. She's running to be in office, and that's not the case. But I think when you see CNN, which is her home base, criticizing her, and you're seeing it more and more. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they're just thinking, man, Trump's going to win and we can't lose all credibility, or we're really screwed. I don't know. I can't speak. I'm not in the room during those conversations, but I just think you're sensing this push and that Trump is being more disciplined, because you guys that hear and listen to the show, and I know people like Ray and some other people like, what are we doing? We're going to criticize Trump all day long? Well, if he deserves it, yes. I'm going to criticize him when it needs to be criticized, because I want to correct him. As a Christian, I'm called to correct, encourage, and rebuke, 2 Timothy 4. For me, that's my worldview. And that applies to me, applies to my family, to my brother, to me, to George, to Karen. I mean, and so we're called to do that. So I just see, when I look at these rallies, I just see a difference in culture. And culture meaning the way they want to do things. What is the air? What is the message they want to send, not only to our country, but to the world? And even though she's saying she's going to be a president for all people, she has not campaigned that way. And so I call bullshit on that one.
You know that. I'm sorry.
I
Go
was
ahead,
going to say, I
George.
think there's,
No.
I think there's signs that, healthy signs that the propaganda just isn't sticking anymore. And you've heard us on Sidebar. I'm sure we got definitions for propaganda. My favorite is when somebody attacks the obvious. You know, it's happening right in front of you. You can point to it, you can feel it, but they tell you that your eyes are lying to you. And that's really sort of been the narrative the country has been just sort of suffused in, and we've lost the ability to think clearly. And I think there's some hope that's not working anymore.
Yeah.
If you look at the Madison Square Garden rally, it really was a broad coalition. I mean, there were a lot of Democrats there.
Yeah.
There really were. You know, you can call them whatever, recently matured Democrats. But you saw quite a few Democrats there. It was a coalition. You had men, you had women, you had Republicans, conservatives, a broad spectrum of people. And they came together around this sort of intense desire to solve the nation's problems. And you have that. And then you have the media saying it was divisive.
Sure.
And then you have the other candidate that's calling Trump literally Hitler, an existential crisis, a clear and present danger. Always enjoy that. And Americans aren't buying it. We have every indication to see that for the first time in a long time, enough Americans aren't buying that we might actually make the turn back to sanity. You know you've reached a point when Megyn Kelly says that the most eloquent part of the rally was Donald Trump.
That is amazing.
I mean,
that really is amazing.
Pretty stunning to me, to your point, Nico.
Yeah.
He's disciplined, he's poised, he's articulating policy more clearly, and that's really the kind of campaign you need to have. Mark, can't wait till you say a few words, because I think that's the campaign you've been managing and leading. Talk about policies. We had a question, we were at a Bible study earlier before the program started this morning, and the question came up and says, you know, what do we do? I mean, because it's so divisive, and tactics are so dirty today. How do we respond to that? I mean, how do you not get angry? How do you not get desperate? And get back to what persuades people, which is just really good ideas. Nico hammers this home all the time. What are the ideas that float your worldview? What are the principles? What are the policies that you stand for? Engage people on that level. There are certain people you'll never be able to convince.
Well, let's just say now, yeah,
But most people aren't like
ideas
that.
have consequences. There's good and bad ideas, and not all ideas are the same. And thanks for bringing up Mark. And Mark LaHood is my brother, and he's running for House District 121, and he's been running. And my mom and my pop are here, and so I got a compliment on him the other day. I mean, I get a lot of compliments, but the one person said, I like his ads. And I don't watch TV, but my TV is YouTube. And I saw one of his ads, and I texted him too, and it got affirmed the same day. It was positive. It was like, look, I'm not gonna rag on my opponent. I mean, I'll point out the differences, but I'm not gonna personally attack her. There's no need to. This is what I want to do for 121, and ultimately for Texas. And so, look, I mean, Mark and I have zero issue disagreeing. I mean, we're good at it with each other. And so, if I think he's doing something wrong, I'm going to tell him. I'll do it privately, of course, and be a good steward with that correction. But he's going to serve not only 121, he's going to serve all of Texas, because that's just the way he's wired. I mean, his experiences, my experience, our family's experiences are differently. He's wired differently. He's not addicted to being liked. I mean, he's not trying to be unliked, but that just comes with the territory. And it's unfortunate that we have that type of tension in politics today, where the rule is you have to hate the other side to disagree with them. That's crappy advice. It's a horrible way to do politics, and we need to change it by the way we conduct ourselves. Me, as someone who is conservative, and that means something, we shouldn't be afraid of that word. But I have a lot of friends that are not conservative, and I have business partners that are not conservative, and there's people in our law firm that are not conservative. But there's some set of ideas that hold us together as people. as a country, and as a firm. And so Mark's running for that reason. I mean, Mark, do you want to come up real quick and just say a couple things?
I want to ask Mark some questions too. So you've been part of several campaigns.
Yeah.
Mark's in the midst of one, but I wonder, and I know, George, you have the polling numbers and the facts and the data, but I wonder, when you were right in the middle of your campaign, did you have a feeling this isn't going to be good? This isn't going good. How are decisions made on a daily basis?
Well, campaign is like a jury trial. You're waiting for the verdict. I mean, so I was.
Did you have any feelings though, or
You have a feeling of where you're at, but ultimately you don't know until you know. I mean, but you get a sense, especially if you're out there in the community, you have a pulse on the community, but you don't want to count your chickens before they're hatched or whatever it says. But yeah, you do have a sense.
That said, I mean, how do you think the Harris-Walz campaign
look,
is feeling?
I mean, I think they're feeling desperate. I mean, when you have Julia Roberts doing commercials saying, "Hey, your husband doesn't have to know how you vote," I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Bizarre.
It was odd. It was just weird. What do you mean? I mean, first of all, I mean, again, biblically minded man, you shouldn't keep anything from your spouse. And if you disagree, I mean, I have friends that they disagree on politics. Okay, great. You still love each other. You have to raise a family. You do life together. But
lying.
You're promoting lying
Right.
to vote. And why would you have to lie if you're not embarrassed of your candidate? I should be proud of it, right? So it was just everything. I think everything's odd. I don't know how close it is. I'll leave that to the scholars like George and all the bean counters that look at the polls. But
Yes, I am.
well, Saulo's a beaner and he's a bean counter. I mean, so what? I can't do that
wait,
joke?
you can't do-
You said
Ne-
to do the jokes before you. All right,
Next,
there you
you're
go.
going to be talking about garbage. Yeah.
Hey, that's an improvement. When I joined the program, he said I was herpes.
Okay. Yeah.
So
What are you doing?
He's going to get up just like
if
you.
you're going to stretch, I'm going to stretch.
Well, it's
Go
just because
ahead.
Mark's sitting down. That's fine. But
He's like, why am I up here again?
yeah. No, but I want him to talk. I mean, because he's going to go out there. He's going to be block walking this weekend. Look, we're sprinting to the end. Tuesday's election day for everything, not just for 121 and all the House districts. I mean, and Senate and everything else, but for the presidency, and it's important. So, I mean, Mark, I don't know if you want to say something and make a pitch, maybe a voter, just say something. I don't know.
How is your campaign going? It's at the end. Are you feeling relief or more stress?
It feels good. I mean, I'm still gun shy from the DA race, but I've knocked thousands of doors. Our team has knocked over 10, 15,000 doors. It feels good. People are frustrated, whether you're a D5 or an R5 or anywhere in between. I mean, the three biggest concerns that we have seen is security, safety, finances, taxes, and just making sure that we're free. I mean, shockingly, a lot of Democrats are really bothered by censorship. I mean, Republicans and conservatives are, but, like, when I'm talking to them, I say, look, my philosophy is this. I'm not ashamed of what I believe. You ask me a question, I'll tell you what I believe, but I think we need to get back to debating it on the House floor versus using calendars and the parliamentarian and the back structure to kill it before it gets out. Like, these people are elected by their constituents. If it's a good idea, you shouldn't be afraid to find the truth, right? Like, I guess my philosophy on politics, like my philosophy on my faith, is I enjoy talking to people that disagree with me. My hope is that you're going to convince me I'm wrong. I mean, not that I want to be wrong, but I don't want to believe what I want to believe. I want to believe the truth. So give me your ideas. I'll give you mine, and hopefully I'm going to pull you over to our side.
You said you're gun shy because of the DA's race, but don't you believe that all of us are gun shy because of the last election? Like, I want to believe.
Well, that's clear. I mean, Trump is a force of nature. I mean, he's had the media against him. They suppressed stories, and it was still extremely tight. I mean, I think everyone's anxious. I mean, one of our oldest daughter is a senior, and one of her best friends told his mom when his mom and Erica were voting on Thursday, I think it was.
Erica's his wife.
And yeah, thank you. Love you, Erica. But he goes, Mom, go to HEB, buy cans, buy food. He goes, I'm really scared what's going to happen on Tuesday. And she looked at him, she was shocked because she hadn't really thought about that. But I mean, the reality is there's a lot of anxiety right now, a lot of fear.
Toilet paper.
Well, God, people are a funny animal. But you know, I mean, we all are. It's difficult, right? Because God knows what's going to happen, and we just have to accept it and do our part to find out what His decision is. But the waiting is the hard part. That's the human part of it, I guess.
I have to ask, who has already voted? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
See, George,
Literally
this is
almost
the poll.
everybody? If you haven't, it's okay. And you suck, but I mean, it's okay.
How many people have friends and family that haven't voted? We probably all know.
Yeah.
It's our
That's true.
obligation. The reality is this, and I firmly believe this. Everyone says it, but this is the election that will determine all future elections. And I'm talking from president to Senate to House to judicial to these propositions that are trying to expand the government. You know, complacency is the one thing that will kill us, right? I tell people, if you don't vote, don't bitch. Can I say that? Are we on?
Yeah, we're
Can I
good.
say
After
that?
show.
You're
Knock
asking
say it on
this of
radio,
your
too.
brother?
No, but seriously, I mean, you know, and unfortunately, Tuesday is going to be long lines, but voting is not just a campaign slogan. We the people, there's what, 330 million Americans, 30 million Texans. We outnumber elected servants. They're trying to get us to give them our power. We have the power, but we don't have that power if we don't exercise the voice. And we have to get out there, and regardless of what you believe,
Vote,
there's a
yeah.
great slogan, make it too big to rig. And we have to get our numbers out there. We have to send a message. They're trying to convert Texas. If Texas falls, there goes the nation. We are the last true large bastion. Our electoral college votes, we have a duty and obligation. And I'm glad we all voted, but to get our friends and family to get out there and vote. So please do, and thank you all for voting.
I don't
God
want
bless
to
y'all.
change the subject,
Sorry.
but no. I always interrupt. Ask him.
Yeah.
If
You must
there
know
is
my
one,
wife.
Yeah, there is one thing that I still don't understand when I look at maps of Texas, and maybe it has changed, but why is the border still blue?
The border
It's
or
changing.
or
The border
urbans?
towns. She's talking about the border
Yeah.
towns.
Well, I mean,
The Texas border. I always forget.
I think that
Yeah,
goes
what
back to a
part?
couple of issues. I think it goes back to the ideology that Hispanics and minorities in general, African Americans, belong to the Democratic Party. Good friend of mine from college, he's a comedian, and we used to have horrible arguments in college. And when Trump was running for re-election in 2020, he had about 1 million followers. He did a Facebook Live, and he said, "Hey, I voted today."
He's Mexican.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's not just Mexican. He's a first-generation American citizen, meaning his parents are both, they're both legal citizens now, but they came from Mexico. And he said, "Hey, I voted for Trump, and this is why." And immediately, you know, his followers were like, "You're a Tio Juan, you're an Uncle Tom."
Tio Juan?
Yeah, yeah.
That's new, and I like that.
Never heard
And he came back with a video, and he said, "I can't tell you how you were raised. My parents raised me to love God, love my country, love my family. I believe in hard work. I believe in traditional values." I go, how I was raised, what I believe, aligns with the Republican Party more than what we're dealing with now. And I think we're seeing people start to wake up. But what is underestimated is this stranglehold. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden literally told African Americans, "You're not black unless you vote for me." He literally said that.
Yeah.
And no one got offended. I mean, he literally said, "This party, you belong to this party." What's that guy? The Geraldo Rivera said, "You're not Mexican unless you're Democrat." First of all, no one owns us. Like, if you want to be a Democrat, I disagree with you, but God bless you. You do you. I mean, that's what freedom is. No one owns us. And that's the problem is we own ourselves. Well, God owns us, but, you know, we are the masters of our fate. No one owns us. And the more people that get out there and voice that and say, I believe what I want to believe, right? I mean, we just need to get out there and show that.
I think it's a very important point because if you trace the history back, no one would ever know that Black Americans were pretty consistent Republican
Yeah.
voters. Really,
Well,
until
we were founded. Republican Party was founded as a result of slavery and the abolition movement.
Indeed, Mark. But this gets back to correcting the record. Correcting the spin. Until the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which most people think that it was Republicans who were pushing back, it was actually the opposite. Republicans Republicans were actually pushing for that and more supportive of it. Far more Republicans than Democrats. We had to drag Democrats across the lines kicking and screaming. But remember, we don't teach history. It's really not until LBJ's, the Great Society, right? And until those policies started embedding sort of in the mindset of America, and particularly in black Americans, that somehow Democrats had always been their best friends. This is the power of history. That's why Nico, and I always keep coming back to, we got to start teaching history again, because there's obviously a concerted effort to detach people from their history. And when you do that, you can make them do anything you want them to do. If people are detached from their history, what can't you make them do? I mean, they don't have an identity. And you detach them from their heritage, from the very principles that their nation was founded on. You can literally manipulate an entire people. And so you stole my ability to say, and you can hear me say, Mark, that I can't think of a single politician on a national stage or a local stage who's making education sort of a front and center piece of their campaign. I've heard you talk more about that, and as it pertains to the religion of diversity, equity, and inclusion being taught in schools, than any other politician, and I mean that sincerely. And I think that that's where the success of this country lies, to get back to the classroom, because that's where it begins. That's where kids are being indoctrinated. They're not being informed. They're being indoctrinated against their own country. We're not producing productive citizens. We're producing revolutionaries.
But Mark's friend back then, in 2000, what's his name again?
Pete Herrera. His stage name is Chingo Bling.
I thought Chingo Bling. That's a fun name. Chingo Bling. So Pete, that took more courage in 2020 than 24. Yeah. I mean, it's not so crazy to support Trump now. I mean, you have more and more people supporting Trump, from politicians to, I mean, not just politicians, but people and actors and podcasters. Trump has done a great strategy this last quarter of his campaign, going on these podcasts. Has been an excellent pick, by the way.
Yes.
If you want to see a master class in how to handle a progressive interviewer, and Jake Tapper's interview of J.D. Vance, I couldn't send it out more. It is a master class. A master class. I'm serious. I wasn't a J.D. guy. I wasn't. I went in Marco Rubio, and I was thinking, well, what about the Latino vote and the Hispanics and whatever? And Marco's showing a lot of courage, and he's been doing great, which he has. Marco Rubio's been amazing. He's doing wonderful. But J.D. Vance has shown to be just, and you can see, and what I think J.D.'s doing, and we talked about this last week, I think he's actually moving the needle. I think J.D.
Yes.
Vance, most people say, the vice president, who gives, like, nobody gave a crap about Pence. He was a nice guy, he's a Christian, great, but he's insignificant. He's got that weird smirk, he's got that voice. I criticize him the same. I'm not an after January 6th non-liker of Pence. You can ask these two. I didn't like him from the beginning. I liked that he was a Christian, but I just thought he was stale. But J.D. Vance is actually moving the needle.
Yes.
He's going on these podcasts, he's doing these interviews, he's going in hostile territory, and I think that there's people that are like, gosh, I may vote for Trump, but I'm going to hold my nose, but I align more with the ideas of this party than this one. These people have lost their damn minds over here. But man, if that dude is the future, if I just got to tolerate Trump for 4 years and then that dude may run the country, I think I could do it. I really think he's moving the needle. I don't have any data.
If there was ever an argument for that, I think that this is probably the first time. But he gets into the weeds. He's able to do it. He's personable, but he can also get into policy. And I love that he's going back to the Trump playbook. Hey, remember, 45 was in office for 4 years. Here's what he did. And he drills down into it. It's the same guy, by the way. He's just going to continue phase 2. So he has that working for him, but he's able to delve in. And on this issue, and I think he's done a really good job, this idea of censorship and really sort of trying to crush what you think, because if you can crush what you think, you can crush what you say. And that's really very deliberate. We are dealing with a neo-Marxist, communistic, anti-God, anti-American worldview. This is a clash of worldviews, and I think more than ever, it's truly that election from which we may never, and I don't mean to be pessimistic, I'm just saying we just know what's at stake. You've got a battle between two diametrically opposed worldviews. I mean, this is what Marx taught, right? Dialectical materialism, the opposites. It's inherently divisive, philosophically. You will have a future of constant division because there's a pursuit of power, there's a pursuit of revolution, no longer the pursuit of truth. That's our future if we don't wise the hell up. Trump's been talking about that more than ever, but you can always go back to the first 4 years and see what he did in terms of pushing back on this war against free speech, Mark. There's an executive order. Please read it, and I'll shut up because I think it's important to just throw out there. It's Executive Order 13864 that Trump put out there, and he signed. And this is in 2019. And the argument behind was in 2018, the National Association of Scholars had released data dealing with this issue. What exactly is the situation in our colleges and universities? The National Association of Scholars has an academic journal. They actually published this. It's called Academic Questions. You may be able to find this. I think it's volume 31, 2018, pages 186 to 197. And it says that 39, I'm serious, it says that 39% of all colleges and universities don't have a single conservative among their staff.
Yeah.
And then they drill down. They queried, Mark, like 8,688 PhD holding staff members, and then they looked at the ratios. And they concluded that there's a ratio of around 10.4 to 1 in terms of Democrats to conservatives. And that's the good news. When you pull out military academies like West Point and Annapolis, it becomes like 12.7 to 1. That's outrageous. Kids are not getting exposed to education. They're not taught how to love their country. They're taught how to detest their country because they're getting one narrative. Trump gets that. The administration gets that. There's policies around it. J.D. Vance has done a beautiful job talking about it, and I'm glad at the local level you're doing the same thing.
So, Mark, are you guys going to block walk today?
Yes.
So you're doing it also?
Yeah, I got my shirt underneath. I don't.
I have an umbrella that you can use.
Well, and then you're block walking Sunday also? Or
after Mass, yeah.
And then Monday.
Monday I have court.
But you're gonna have people out there working.
Yes.
sprinting to the
Yeah,
end,
no,
and
we
you're
have
gonna
people
work
working
polls.
all weekend, myself
So
included.
look, I mean, if you guys know people in District 121 and all these state representative positions, I mean, please encourage people to vote. Look, I mean, what I tell people, you know, and my mom has been working. Our mom's been working
Every
the
day,
polls
all day.
every day, all day. You know.
And she made the news last night, KSAT.
Why?
They did a article on early voting, but they had a little clip of mom all covered up with my sign.
Oh, good. Well, there you go. That's called earned media. That's called earned media. That's good. And she earned some media.
I love it.
Mrs. LaHood, which one is your favorite?
Okay.
Forget Trump. You're a force of nature.
Blink twice if it's me.
Blink twice if it's him. But no, but that's good.
Yes.
Well, I'm proud of him. Look, he's
Yes.
he's garnered the support of Governor Abbott and Ken Paxton and Sid Miller and Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
And I hope you to encourage people to vote for Ted Cruz too. I mean, we need him back.
That
in-
is so scary.
I mean, look, yeah.
Is that just the media, or is he really neck and neck?
I think he's okay.
Whew, that's scary.
What are
do
you
you
hearing?
think?
I
What
mean,
do
I
you
think he's probably within about 3 points right now.
I think that he's going to win, but
Yeah.
get out and vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get out and vote.
Yeah.
Get out and vote.
Yeah.
Vote. Vote.
What are you trying to say?
Should they go out and vote? Should
So-
they go out and vote?
They all voted.
Well,
though.
I mean, I know,
But-
but
everybody
Yeah.
else. get
there's a
people.
camera here.
Yeah,
People
there's
are
a
watching
camera.
that aren't
People
here.
are watching. Get your ass out there and vote.
But no,
Amen.
but seriously, that's good though. But proud of him. He's done a great job. I know
Yes.
he's got to work, but I wanted him to come over and give his insight because he's in the trenches. He's got a pulse, sir. Oh, you want to explain that?
Well, first of all, don't call it vouchers. That's propaganda. So,
Right.
Say it.
real briefly, shameless plug for my campaign, but I'm going to come back to what George was saying on that issue. So, education is one of the reasons why I got in the race, because I'm a firm believer of this. There's two parts of the equation. One, education starts at the family, but we can't legislate the family, right? The sad reality is when the family structure breaks down, there's a consistent trend you see in schools with the parents that are involved with their kids and how they perform, and the ones that aren't involved with their children and how they perform. But I don't believe the government has any right to regulate that. So the only thing we can monitor is when we send our children to school, they're there for 8 hours a day in local apprentice. We have to make sure that they are getting the education that they need. I mean, 121, statewide it's even worse, but in 121, over half of our children, and 121 has some of the very best school districts in San Antonio and Bexar County. Over half our kids are below where they should be in their per grade level when it comes to mathematics. Almost 40% are behind where they should be when it comes to reading. No one talks about that. Statistically, by third or fourth grade, if you're behind where you should be, there's like a 93% chance you'll never get caught up. You know, George touched on it. the First Amendment is the most important amendment because why? Knowledge is power. Education, press, religion, protest, ideas. Our children aren't learning how to think. And so coming back to what my mom was asking, so vouchers is a program that was used in other states. That's not what I'm an advocate of. I'm an advocate for making sure that we provide the most excellent education for all of our children, and we empower parents to do what's best for their children. And, you know, I don't think that business principles change just because we're talking about politics. So as of last session, the TEA, Texas Education Agency, was spending $15,708 per child in 121. They break it down even further. About 40% of that, about $4,500, is the fixed costs of keeping the school open, you know, lights, cafeteria, all that. The last iteration of school choice was that $8,000 of that $15,708 was going to follow the child, homeschooling, private school, whatever the parents believe is best for their child. That remaining $7,700 is going to stay with the school district. Well, call me crazy, but if your fixed costs are $4,000 and change, you're getting $7,700. You're not having the cost of educating that child. You're actually getting a windfall of $3,700. School choice, parental empowerment, they're lying to us. It's not defunding public education. It's a power grab. You know, I'll leave this one thing because I'm talking too much, but the best anecdote I can give is in September, I went to the Mexican-American Legislative Council casino night. I had no idea it was a hardcore Dem. Trey Martinez-Fisher was like the chair of it. But I sit down, and I still would have gone, but I had no idea. And I sit down at a blackjack table with 3 Latinas. My wife, Erica, myself, and these 3 ladies. And we start talking, and this is Nico's phone, but I've turned into that guy to make fun of showing pictures of my kids. Hey, these are my kids. You have kids? Yeah, we do. You love your kids, right? Of course we do. You want the very, sorry, that's your friend?
That's right.
You want the very best for your child. Of course I do. No one knows your child and what they need better than you. No one does.
True.
If your child wasn't thriving in the school they're in, would you want the ability to take your child and put them in an environment where they will thrive? You damn right I would. Yeah.
True.
And the last question I asked him is, would you want part of the tax money that you're paying to stay in the school district or the school system that's failing your child, or would you want that to follow your child? All 3 of them said yes, because I left out voucher. I left out these code words that just shut people down and just talked about truth.
Yeah.
And coming back to J.D. Vance does what y'all do, which talks about the truth in a very matter-of-fact way. I believe everybody is in favor of it. You know, Fulton Sheen has a great quote about the Catholic faith, although I think it applies to everything. He goes, you know, there's not 100 people that hate the Catholic faith, but there's millions of people who hate what they believe the Catholic faith is. And I think that quote applies to school choice, politics, all ideologies. People don't know the entire truth of the argument, and it's incumbent upon us to educate them. So I think education is just as important, if not more important, but what's left out of that equation also is making sure that our teachers are being treated as, you know, this last thing I'll leave. 3 weeks ago, I spent about 45 minutes with a couple. She was a teacher from Bradley Middle School. And she told me straight up, I'm against school choice, you know, and I talked with her. And by the end of the conversation, she says, I believe in you. It makes sense. I support you. We have to make sure that we are taking care of our teachers, because she was on a Saturday, 2 beautiful kids, and she was spending 4 or 5 hours grading stuff because the ratio is not there, the pay is not there. Texas is successful. There is nothing more important than our security and our education, our teachers, and we got to make sure that we take care of both. So
Good job.
that was it. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Amen.
Thanks, Nico.
Good job.
Love
Love
that.
that.
Love you. Careful. It's all right. Going down. All right, of course, brother. God bless you.
So, Nico, you said that this time around, Trump has just really gone to every podcast, friendly or not friendly, and that has been a part of his big success. 4 years ago, Trump was in the basement because of COVID.
Right. Well, Trump wasn't.
I mean,
Biden
Biden was in the. I always get it confused. Is it a basement or closet? But
Right.
anyway, so now
Trump supporters were in the closet. Biden was in the basement.
Right. So now Kamala is in the basement and hasn't done interviews. I mean, it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, well,
It
she's
doesn't
in a
matter, so-
walkout basement. She's not in the basement like Biden was, but she's in a walkout basement because she does interviews, but they're not hard-hitting interviews. Brett Baer was a little bit, but she showed up 15, 20 minutes late, so she limited that, and then she got her moment, and we talked about it on the show weeks ago. I think she was looking for a viral moment. She got angry, and she says this. She doesn't answer questions. I mean, she really hasn't had a really tough interview. I mean, a really long, tough interview. She hasn't shown the stamina that if I was not decided, and I don't know who's not decided right now, but apparently there's 2 or 3%, whatever, but that I would worry about how is she going to interact with world leaders that are animals. I mean, Trump says this. I mean, he says it appropriately. I know we need to get back to Madison Square Garden and that joke and the garbage and the Puerto Rico and all this other stuff. But I mean, what is she going to do in negotiations? I mean, this is when you're in a room, as Trump says, around killers, and sometimes you're dealing with killers. Xi Jinping, Putin, these are killers. I mean, they're literal murderers. I mean, these are, and they play the game. And Trump look, he's the good crazy. He's crazy, but he's our crazy. I mean,
Crazy like a fox.
well, but he's crazy. But I mean, but I believe,
it's just crazy.
But I think it's righteous. I mean, there's a righteous crazy about him, and just when you see and look, I just pray for the truth to be revealed. When you see CNN actually correcting people on that statement he said about Liz, he didn't say he wanted her shot. I mean, they've been bastardizing words and deceiving people for a long time. Look, if you know the truth, this is what I used to tell this one very dishonest person that worked for that magazine that we call a newspaper here. But, and I said, look, if you report the truth and I don't like it, shame on me. I need to change my behavior. But if you don't report the truth and you have an agenda, then shame on you. You and I are always going to be sideways. And we'll just fight it out. And I don't care about picking a fight with people that buy ink by the barrel. That was what they used to say early on in politics. But with social media now, who gives a crap? I mean, you really don't. It doesn't matter as much because even though it does matter, I'm not going to lie. But still, there's ways to fight. Vivek Ramaswamy splashed on the scene, and Bobby Kennedy got up to 20% of the Democrat side because they went on every podcast that would have them, adverse ones, contentious ones, favorable ones, softball ones, everything. Trump has picked that up, and I believe it's benefited him. I think you're seeing this shift. And young people now, I heard a commentary say this, I thought it was interesting. Young people are leaning conservative because you're considered a rebel now if you're a Republican. Isn't that interesting?
Underdog.
You know what? Screw the man. I'm going to F this. My kids are here, so now I got to go PG. but I got to watch my words. But you know, if you're a Republican and you're young, you're considered a rebel, and kids love to be rebels. Mm-hmm. I'll take it. I'll take it. Now they don't realize that they're rebels with logic now, but they're still, but still, and we're working on that. So there's, I think, this genre in between that have really went off the reservation. And to George's point, I think it came down to a lack of education. For me, it's Proverbs 22:6. You start a child up, train a child up in the way they will go. When they get older, they will not depart from it. It doesn't mean they won't sway from it. I'm an example of that. But they won't break from it. They won't depart from it because some set of ideas anchors you back. And as you drift out into the ocean, you can only drift so far because that anchor holds you back. And that's what education and child rearing is to me, not only to a person of faith, of Christian faith, but also to, I think, a conservative that's trying to hold some ideals together, and we need to learn about that. So I just thought it was interesting.
The culture inside conservatism is changing, and I think we can credit the Trump movement for it.
Truly inclusive.
Well, it's become we don't run and hide under our desk anymore. I mean, Republicans, and I'm going to go back to the Trump-Vance ticket because I think they're at the tip of the spear and they're doing it very well. Like this thing with Liz Cheney. I'd say a few years ago, we were like, oh my goodness, we're going to be accused of being what? Would-be murderers and fascists and Hitler lovers. No, they're embracing that. They're saying, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to correct the record and actually talk about what it is that I was talking about, which is our foreign policy. That's really what Trump was saying. It's like, how would you like it, Liz Cheney?
Yes,
how
that's
would you
exactly
like
what he said.
How would you like it if you're standing out there with your gun, there's 9 rifles pointing right back at you?
Yeah.
Now, he's not saying that, I mean, he's not
The
degrading
Democrat used to argue that
Right.
in the old days.
Huge shift. Huge shift. So
Right?
Trump accused her of being a war hawk. Legitimate criticism.
Yeah.
The neocon label actually fits. I used to think it was just a smear, but I'm sorry, we've grown into it, unfortunately. And so I think he's raising a really important point. And the majority of the country is with him on this. Republicans and Democrats. Blue Dog.
Blue Dog, old
Democrats.
school. We can talk about that.
Old school Democrats. So Trump has built a coalition around common sense. And it's coming to fruition because people are over the labels. They're over, okay, if this guy is the worst Hitler I have ever seen. If this guy is racist, holy crap, give me a break. I mean, everywhere he goes, he embraces people. He's empathic. He's empathetic. He reaches out to people of every color. People are seeing that. It's in the history now since 2015. We have 9 years of footage. Is there a guy who's more photographed than Trump? Is there a guy who's more investigated than Trump? No. I mean, there's more videotape of any other politician. No. So we have more data on Trump. I think we would know by now if he was racist. And so the opposite is true. They're embracing these conflicts, and they get to correct the record. What Trump is saying is, I don't want America getting into wars we have no business fighting for interests that don't serve the national interests of the United States. And we are sending our precious young boys out there to get slaughtered, and for what? What exactly is our return on investment? Trump is saying we need to be more judicious. We need to care more about life. And he's talking to mamas out there. I guarantee you there's mamas out there, and women are driving this. They really are. In terms, it's been a vulnerability for Trump. And he's speaking to mamas out there. He said, I don't want my kid to be dispatched to a foreign country to fight a war for causes we don't really give to you-know-what about. And at the end of the day, Trump is really the one making that argument, whereas Liz Cheney cannot find enough battles to send other people's kids to fight. That's the argument.
That's the point he was
That's
making.
the argument, and they're out there now talking about it on every single podcast
Well,
they can get them.
I have to look. We call balls and strikes, and CNN. There was some of the commentators that corrected that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. I think I sent it out, or I think Jeff sent it to us. I don't know who's. I mean, I get so many text messages. I forget where I get them. I just repeat, send. I try to send them out to other people. And I do the same thing that people do to me. But the guy from the Washington Post, what was his name? Did he quit? And right there on that live, did you see that where he was on there? What's his name? Hugh. I mean, yeah, and he's a guy. I mean, he's in that world, and he just said, look, this is dishonest. And the guy, the other commentator, the whatever, was there, and you see his face like, how dare you? I mean, it's like, well, you're lying. I mean, look, we need journalistic integrity, and that used to be that way, where Democrats cared about that, Republicans cared about that. Even in the old days, we want to win, but we want to win the right way, or else it's a fraud. It's not a real win. It seems like certain people, and it seems like it leans more Democrat, that if my side's doing it and it's not truthful, it's okay because we're still going to win. You can't win at all costs. There's consequences to that. No matter who you are, whether you're a Christian, atheist, agnostic, Hindu, Buddhist, Democrat, Republican, you can't win at all costs. And I always warn people, be careful of the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it. Because if they can win at all costs, then we can win at all costs, and they can win at all costs, what I mean. And so you're setting the standard, and we've lost that. We've lost that civility. We've lost the rules of engagement. We have to come back to that, I think. And that's why I encourage people. I put out some video this week. I said, go vote, even if you're voting a different way. Even if you vote, but go vote. I truly want to hear from the people. Yep. If we all put our message out there, both sides, and the people vote against our side, well, then we suck at giving messaging, or our ideas suck. So we need to re-engage, or we've lost our country, or lost our section, or district, or whatever it is. And then you have to fight back from the ground. Doesn't mean you give up, but then you got to go back. Look, we didn't get here overnight. We didn't get here overnight. I mean, if you study the history of this country and where it's gone, and case precedent and advocacy and what happened in public schools from 1844, saying, no, what do you mean you're not going to teach the Bible in school? Yes, you are. You're gonna. It's Vidal. It was from Engel Vidal, but it was Vidal versus Gerard something.
It's Gerard.
Gerard, right?
Yes.
Engel, where it says they wanted to. No, you're going to teach the Bible in school. The Supreme Court said that in 1844. Can you believe that? That they said you're going to teach them. Now, it didn't say you were going to evangelize in school. It didn't say you were going to make them make a professing faith to Christ in school. But you were going to teach the ideas of the Bible in school. That was what girded us down. That was the foundation of this country, whether you like it or not. We have a Judeo-Christian in idea foundation. That's another show. George and I defend that, and so do other people. But we've gotten so far away from that. And you guys have heard me if you watch the show for any amount of time. When I was running for office the first time, I had Republicans for Nico because I ran under the Democrat platform. Even though none of my ideas have changed, by the way. I was the same dude, same.
Yeah.
But the Democrat platform back then, to your question earlier, Karen, the Blue Dog Democrat in the old days is a Republican today, just FYI, or at least an independent, but you're a Republican. But I had Republicans for Nico. And I'd gone to him, I said this on the show a while back, and I went to the Democrat headquarters in Austin. And I picked up what it means to be I remember, I can see the pamphlet in my head. I have no idea where it's at. I know I have it at home somewhere. I have to ask my wife. And it was a pamphlet about that big. It had, believe it or not, a flag on it. It had a flag on it, the American flag. It says what it means to be a Texas Democrat. And I opened it up and I read it to my Republican for Nico's leader. And I said, what do you think about these ideas? And there was like 10 of them. And he says, all but one of them, those are all great Republican principles. I go, I know, but they're in a Democrat pamphlet. Does that make sense?
Times have changed.
Everything has changed.
Yes.
I mean, just listen to the speeches of Pelosi and Obama and Clinton and Schumer and Feinstein from before. If you didn't know who they were and you just heard and just turned everything off and listened to their speeches, you'd think, oh, that's a Republican today, and they weren't. So what's happening? What's going on? I mean, this didn't happen overnight. This has been a slow shift. And whether people believe it or not, I think that there's a lot of votes on the table that we have, as a Republican advocate, have left on the table because people are voting Democrat when they don't believe what they're voting for. It's just because you've been labeled something, and we're so tribalistic, and I've always been a Democrat or whatever it is, and then, and they're going to vote that way. But they're really not in ideas. When you you go in the deep west side, if you go in the deep south side, if you go in the east side, those are traditional family values and traditional American values that grew this country to what it was.
I want to go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think
Don't forget
that
your thought.
and I think that Madison Square Garden, I think it symbolizes what I think is an important pivotal turning point. That Trump is out there under his leadership and the Republican Party now, and telling Americans, hating your country is not normal. Despising yourself for allegedly racial crimes that you didn't commit and actually accepting responsibility for that is not normal, nor is it moral. Thinking that men are women, that's not normal. Thinking that men need tampons, not normal.
Yeah.
That men have menstrual cycles, pretty sure that's not normal. That men breastfeed or chest feed, really, really not normal. That's not normal. And human beings at a gut level know that that's not, but you say something over and over and over again, and you put the power of the state in and you subsidize it, and then you put an educational apparatus around it, you can really render human beings into complete self-destructive idiots.
But you know what? They're really, to be fair, but they're bastardizing definitions. They don't really believe that a biological man can chest feed. What they're talking about is a trans man that's really a woman, but they have to give them, or that men need tampons, they don't. But if it's a woman that identifies as a man, that's what they're doing.
But you've been taught that there's a distinction, so you
Right.
can make that argument. But if it's all you ever hear,
I agree.
it isn't going to mean anything. And so that's really sort of the existential moment that we face right now. We have a future, and Nico, you know my background. My parents are here. Our background. We're prickly to this. We're sensitive to the notion that what we're facing here in this country is a very different America. Americans can't appreciate it because we've always had it so good. We've been so blessed. We have no idea, and I'm going to use these terms because it's exactly the only appropriate terms. If you study history, and especially the 20th century, which is suffused in totalitarian regimes, you'll appreciate this. We have no idea the wilderness of horrors that we are facing. I'm not trying to be divisive. I'm not trying to fearmonger. This is absolutely true. If you think, yes, I do know, but if you think it's racial, you haven't seen anything yet. If you think race is exploited to divide people, you haven't seen anything yet.
Well, Mark just sent me this, to your point. Mark just Cambridge Dictionary definition of a woman.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Cambridge Dictionary. An adult who lives and identifies as female,
Wow.
though
Wow.
they may have been said to have a different sex at birth.
Yeah.
That's the definition.
Exactly.
That's the definition.
So what was previously
Wow.
objectively, on its face, what was previously objectively irrefutable is now up to you. And so you can see what's happened. The locus of authority isn't what actually happens, it's what you feel happened. So the locus of authority has turned inward. This is a philosophical shift in American politics, but it began in a classroom. That's the problem. And I'm telling you, this is never, ever going to change until Americans get the classroom back. This is never going to change.
Yeah.
And every single political cycle, all we're going to be doing is swatting at symptoms. Nico, and that's why I'm genuinely excited about Mark's campaign, because Mark, I hope it catches on. I do. I hope that politicians step back and say, this is ridiculous. Every political cycle where we're going to be fighting over symptoms, we're never going to get to the root cause.
That's right.
We teach our kids to hate each other, and then we're wondering why we're literally at each other's throats every political cycle, because we're subsidizing this BS. That's why. It'll never, ever end. Yeah. Period. Sorry.
I don't want to totally change subjects.
Yeah, you do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
But
Go ahead.
when you
Go ahead.
talked about Trump talking directly to moms, if I recall, suburban women in the last presidential race were the ones that he could not capture. This time, it feels to me like Kamala is actually capturing all women, not all of us, but a chunk of women by saying, he called us cat ladies. He's not going to
JD
let us
said
have
that.
babies. He wants to take away our rights. And how is it that those women are believing that and using that as the reason to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Well, first, some good news. It's true that Trump lost women, and it's true that Trump's still underwater with regard to women. But like other demographics that he's probably not going to win, he's peeled off significant chunks in the double digits, and that matters when it comes to votes. Trump has brought women back into the camp. He's not ahead. She's still ahead when it comes to women. He's ahead, substantially ahead, equally ahead when it comes to men. But what Trump has managed to do, Karen, is and this is really great news, certainly at the national level, but he's done it across the country, and he's bringing people back.
But why is it women? Like, what do those women not like about him?
Oh, it's not what they like about him. It's what's pitched about him. You know that Trump is I don't know. He can be a little brash. Am I understating that, Nico? I mean, Trump's tends to get in your face. Trump will say what he means, and the problem is, and I don't think this is just women. I think that people are sensitized that if you offend someone, what did you say in the men's Bible study? That the three worst words you can say today is what?
I am offended.
I am offended. You will literally shut down conversations.
Yeah.
This is a war on what you think. It's a war on what you say. It's a war on who you are and who God created you to be. This is a worldview that has managed to replace the American focus on individual freedoms, on pursuing who God created you to be. This is antithetical. This is a worldview that seeks to turn human beings into wards of the state. You're here to be a subject. You're not here to be a citizen. And so, women don't have a special dispensation, Karen.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, they're
Karen-
vulnerable to it. Men are vulnerable to it. Children are vulnerable to
I
it.
want to talk about dating. And Nico,
What?
I'm going to talk about you as a young man before you got married.
Okay.
So I'm just using this as a hypothetical. Sometimes, let's just say you could be offensive to people. Let's say that you could be brash. Let's say that you could be call out the truth and be in people's faces. Does that eliminate a certain type of woman? Like, obviously, we know who you got.
The
She's
best.
somebody,
You got the best.
the best of the best of the best.
Got the best.
So, do you think that being that way gets rid of the uneducated, somebody that doesn't know how to stand up for their rights, somebody that,
No.
if you
I think it's a.
liken
I think
dating
it's
to
a.
like
Yeah,
this,
I see your analogy, but I think of it differently. Trump is an awkward person. I mean, he's gracious in times.
and you're not, you're right.
Yeah, no, well, maybe I am. To certain people, I am maybe. But Trump is awkward. I mean, I always tell people, like, he doesn't, look, you just got to call it, if you saw him at Madison Square Garden, he just hugs and kisses weird. He doesn't know how to hug and kiss well. Even when he wants to see a little kid on stage and he goes, and he kisses the sideburn and is like, just give,
Is
don't
it better
do it.
than biting their leg and
Well, no,
foot?
that's, yeah, the foot.
I don't know.
But even his wife, I mean, Melania was going to kiss him, and then he grabs her and goes, and then he does this like weird, just hug your, like J.D. Vance is a good hugger. Did you watch J.D. Vance hug
Yeah,
his wife?
yeah.
He hugged his wife. He's a good hugger. I mean, And so you have to. I mean, it's those type of social awkwardness.
It's a get a room hug, though.
No, but look, he's just
good.
Yeah.
It's a good hug.
Who, JD?
Yeah.
Oh, no, JD's. I said it on the show. He's a good hugger. To Trump, it's little things like that. He's awkward. He's brash. He's had multiple women. He has before politics. He has a BP life, and then after politics life, and during politics life. I think, and then you have the media, because everyone loved him when he was on The Apprentice. I don't know what his polling was
Because
back
he was
then.
brash and.
I mean, Joy Behar she fell over herself. I mean, Rogan talks about that on his podcast. He's like, when he asked him about that, have you seen the clip? I mean, Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar, they just fell over themselves
running
over the
to,
dude.
try to beat each other.
When are you
to
going to
hug
be on
him.
the show again, Donald? I mean, okay, I mean, what happened? He didn't tell you he wasn't part of the cool club kid anymore, and he didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. I mean, Barbara Walters, all of them. I mean, that show has just gone off the deep end for what Barbara Walters really wanted it to be initially. But I think it's a lot of those things. And then Trump used that same brashness, that talent that he has, but then he started doing it against them. So, and then it's like, wait, hold on, you can't do that against us. You got to be with us. And then Trump gives people a lot to work with. You have to admit, you have to call it what it is. He just does. I've learned to overlook it because I'm looking at the big picture, and I'm looking at policies, and I've just kind of had to separate myself from my feelings. Now he's grown on me a lot, and I think he's more disciplined, so that helps. But he still irritates the crap out of me at times.
But women don't like him.
Well, not all women.
But
I know,
I get what you're saying, Karen.
And I don't know if you can poll that the right. Look, I still don't think that he polls accurately. I'm not this dude. Let him figure out the polling stuff, and he'll dissect it all. I don't think, who answers polls? I don't. I mean, I don't want to talk to you about it. I don't want to give you information about me, number one, because I don't trust you. But number two, even though I'm public about it, obviously, but I just don't know what, no one answers polls, so I just don't know. I don't know where he's at with women, George. I mean, but I think he's...
That's where he's at. I mean, he's ahead relative to where he was in 2016 and 2020,
good.
But she's still ahead. And
Where was he in 16? Where was he in 16 with Hillary? That's what I want to know.
He was not ahead with
Was he
No,
still
he
down?
wasn't. No, he's
Well,
never
then,
been ahead
okay.
with women. But the point is, he's pulled double digits away from support.
Forget 20.
Well, forget
16.
Hillary. From
No, but from 16,
Yes,
is he
yes.
ahead of with women than 16?
relative 16 levels, yes. Relative 2020, yes.
that's good.
He
That's
has.
good stuff.
And I think it's because of the pain points. We're beyond the slogan now. See, this is the thing. A lot of Democrat voters have sort of operated at the slogan level, and with respect, some conservatives have too. And you got to go beyond the slogan. You got to look at policy. What does this person actually do? So if I told you, for instance, well, I'll use myself. So if someone tells you that I am the most racist person on earth, and yet you never see me do a racial thing, you see me be kind and gracious and genuinely concerned about minorities. That might work at first because you don't know me, but at some point, you're going to say, maybe you're nuts and you should seek some help. And I think that's where we are right now. I think there's been enough, Trump's logged enough hours, Nico. There's been enough there, and with women as well. And so you're getting to the root cause. This radical feminist drive, yes, it is Marxist in nature because it is divisive. It's dialectical in nature. Marxism looks at every opportunity in society. Marxist communism look at every opportunity in society to divide people. So they'll do it along race. They'll do it in economic. The original Marxist theory was in economics. Men and women, husbands and wives, children and parents. And usually where someone's in authority, they'll try to find division in those structures. And this is what happens, by the way. You have a cultural revolution that ultimately leads to a structural revolution. So when you look at your institutions, they're affectionately mined. The American institutions are effectively mined. They're of this mindset. I mean, you see it, right? Universities, schools, corporate boardrooms, government agencies, churches. You'd seem like everywhere, look, this mindset has set in. And the radical feminist move really started to create a gender war, and it's been very successful. The point is that I think people are feeling pain points. They can't pay their bills. They can't put gas in their car. And now that's mattering more than the slogan that Trump is somehow some male chauvinistic racist pig. And unfortunately, it took this kind of pain in the economy. And I pray it doesn't take more pain to get us to realize that we got to turn around. So I think that's what it is. I think you've got a radical feminist movement in the country that's running out of gas. And unfortunately, we're not there yet.
I know, but I see them and I'm like, ooh, I don't want to be part of them. Why are there so many of them? And why are they screaming so much?
But this has been taught. I mean, this has been taught since you were young. You get middle school, you get high school, you get college. This is all you know. Then you get home. You're on your phone these days. You don't even have any interaction with your parents, right? You get basically indoctrinated by social media. If you look this issue up right now, look at the first 12 articles that come up. And there'll be man-hating articles. It'll be, what is it, Nico? Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I hate that.
You won't see a balanced view on there. So they get this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a few decades, and you'll think this is normal. And I'm telling you, what I sense at Madison Square Garden is that Trump announced a new golden age of getting back to common sense. We're getting back to reality.
You can't ignore it. I mean, you had
Can't.
20,000 people in Madison Square Garden. You had 75,000 people outside.
Yeah.
Then you had 30,000 people in the Bronx. I don't know what that translates to, but it means something.
100,000 people in Butler.
I mean,
It
that
translated
means
into
something.
America. I don't think it was, just like you said, Democratic or Republican.
Well, we
It
know
was
that. We know that
America.
there were Democrats in the crowd. And I remember in the Bronx one, some old school, I don't know, Jewish lady, Italian lady, typical New York accent. I've voted Democrat my whole life, but I'm tired of this, and she's going to support Trump.
Even that Chinese
And
lady, did you see she stood before the crowd with if you are on social media as much as I am, she had like a 10-minute speech about why she was voting for Trump. Many reasons, woman, immigrant, and you're right. It's across the spectrum, this to this.
It is demographically diverse. It's not white people.
Yeah.
No.
There's plenty of
Right.
black people who are out there voting for Trump, and they're very vocal about it. I mean, I don't know where I heard this. Was a few weeks ago, and I thought, man, that's beautiful. I wish somebody could put this and just run it, spool it, 24 hours, 7 days a week. They were talking about historical black colleges and universities. Trump, during his administration, invited leaders from historically, it's a thing, HBCUs, to come into the White House and created an advocacy office from inside the White House. Gave them basically a permanent stream of federal funds and yearly access to Pell Grants to help with their student loan, their summer students. Now, why is this significant? He did it in his 5th week. He brought him in, 5th week of his presidency, brought him in, listened, just sat there and listened to their concerns and approved all their requests. Now, why is this significant? Barack Obama was in office for 8 years. Every single one of these college presidents from historically black colleges and universities tried as hard as they could to get time with him. He blew them off.
Yeah.
He ignored them for 8 years. We're at a point now in America, it seems to me, where we're looking at policy, finally. We're actually looking, what does this person actually do?
On that point,
really,
too, George,
Yeah.
you heard the story of Jack Johnson. You know who Jack Johnson was? He was the first black heavyweight boxing champion. And he was prosecuted and convicted for dating a white woman across state lines. And he was convicted of it. And he was never been exonerated. And Obama was in office for 8 years. I mean, that's bullshit. I mean, that should have never happened. But it happened. And so Van Jones worked with another black advocate and Sylvester Stallone, and they appealed to Trump. Trump bought them in. Van Jones gave him a little bit of credit back then. That's why Van's a mixed bag for me. I mean, I think he's genuine at times, and then, I don't know, I got really feelings about that guy, even though I disagree with him on almost everything. But he went, and he exonerated and pardoned Jack Johnson. That's a big deal, because it means something. Those are not the signs of a racist person. It's just not. So it's factually. I'll give you an example. I don't know. I'll just use his first name. So when I was running, they attacked me for being homophobic, which I have no idea. I mean, I hired people that lived that lifestyle. I have friends. I mean, I went to whatever meetings. I never treated anybody differently, and people didn't know that. And there's this guy, Chris. I don't have permission to use his last name. He is arguably, and you might know who I'm talking about, but he said, I am the gayest man in San Antonio, self-proclaimed. Nice guy. And so I wasn't there. And so they were talking about, Nico's homophobic. God bless you. And he's homophobic. And he goes, that is a false statement. This is Chris defending me. He says, I am arguably the gayest man in San Antonio. You know what I'm talking about now? And he goes, and every time I see Nico, I mean, I grab him, they take a picture. Oh, when are you going to take your shirt off? I mean, and I probably sexually harass him every day, every time I see him. And every time I call him, He always returns my call. Whenever I see him, he doesn't try to avoid me, and he's never ignored me. So he doesn't agree with me on my lifestyle, but he doesn't. So on its face, that's a false statement. And I appreciated that. I really appreciated Chris doing that. It meant a lot to me. And I think I wish people would do that with Trump. I mean, you can't call him a racist. You can, but you're not going to do it with credibility. And you can't call him a Nazi. You just can't. And just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you hate them. And you can, because the one-sided hate speech only goes one way if you notice, even though there's been plenty of, very overt hate speech on the other side. And the standards, they shift and they move. And that's not our justice system, although it's becoming that, by the way. But that's our political system as well. And so I think more people are digging down into who Trump is, and that's why these podcasts, I think, have helped him. And this idea that he's a rebel, look, he gets convicted. A lot of mine was like, hey, he got convicted, so was I. All right, I'll come in with you guys. He got shot. Man, he's a badass. He stood up. Look, what are you going to say? You get shot.
He has 3 baby mamas.
Oh, is that right? Well, there you go. He got 3 baby mamas. There's something to be proud of. And so then you have all these things that they're relating to, this toughness of him. Look, you can't make that stuff up. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, Mike Tyson said, right? Yeah, that's right. And I know a lot of my analogies around fighting because that's my background. But it's true. The guy got shot. He didn't know how bad it was. He's bleeding on a stage. There's a shock value there. And he stands up and flips the middle finger essentially to the people that shot him and said, fight, fight, fight. That means something. And I think people respect that. I think that was a shift. I think you've seen a lot of these things, and then him going on this, and then him finally adjusting to this new Harris person. He would have just trounced on Biden. Yeah. But now you got this shift, and these people that were going to stay on the couch, now they're out, and they're the tribal Democrats, even though they're not thinking it through. And now they have someone to vote for, even though they're going to do it with their nose holding, I think. But I think people are seeing Trump for who he is, a very, very flawed man. A man that I know that I don't believe the man is saved. I don't think he's made a professing faith in Christ, which he doesn't have to be. I want him to be, but so I'm not going to defend him. Like people say, oh, you just think he's a Messiah. No, I don't. There's one Messiah, and it's not me, and it sure as hell ain't Trump. But I think he's advocating for ideals, not just biblical ideas, but ideals that undergirded this country, and I think that's what we need. And I think we have 4 years of Biden-Harris, so we have no excuses. You have a true horse race. You have a comparison, a side by side. You can say Biden-Harris did this, Trump did this. What do you want? Now you have a choice, and we get what we're going to get on
just
Tuesday.
Pick a category, pick anything, and I think that's our politics are getting back to that. I hope it seems to be, but pick a category. You could literally do. There's a guy, you should look it up. It's a great piece. Deroy Murdoch wrote for DailySignal.com, and I think it was beautifully done. And what he did is he literally went A to Z, and he said, here's what those 4 years look like in terms of policy, and he literally did that. Took 26 letters of the alphabet, and he crafted and he described the policy that Trump administration had implemented with tons of links. Those kinds of educational materials are useful. And as I was reading, I was thought, J.D. Vance is out there doing that, and he's literally doing that organically. He studied this stuff. J.D. Vance brings an eloquence and an intellectualism desperately needed to Trumpism. He really does. And he's articulating stuff that, getting down in the weeds, that Trump just doesn't have patience for. Now, Trump's been articulating much more policy. You get that boy talking about tariffs, and you can't shut him up. There's a great video. Nico knows I love it. I've watched it twice now, and it's really long. It's an hour and a half. And you should look it up. He's at the Chicago Economic Club, and he's invited by an Oxford scholar, John Mithilthwaite. It's tough to say that name. And they literally sparred for a good 48 to 50 minutes on tariffs. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Trump tussled and gave as good as he got, and Trump won the argument. He won the argument at the end of the day because John Mithilthwaite's sitting there talking theoretically. And Trump's saying, yeah, I get that that's where you are theoretically, but here's what I actually did for 4 years.
And what happened.
And here's what actually happened.
Yeah.
So this isn't just lecture time, it's lab time. And I've been in the lab, and here's the results. And I think every American, it's a shame because how many people sit down and listen to an hour and a half of economics? But Trump is a smart guy. It's just not his thing. It's not natural, it's not organic to him to talk at that level. But he can, and he'll do it. And so I wish that Americans got to see that
Well,
side
I
of
look.
more.
I mean, I think I want to open up for Q&A. I think we're ready for
Absolutely.
Q&A, right? We should. 'Cause, I mean, we've been doing this for an hour, so the show would have ended without commercials. So we got an extra 20 minutes here. But I want to do a Q&A. And our good friend Alamo Talk had a question, which I'm glad. Hey, I'm glad you're tuning
We
in.
are
Oh,
on
I like
Facebook Live,
yeah.
right?
No, I think it's wonderful. So I want to start with him first, just because then the questions will keep coming in, and we want to open up to the audience, and then you'll be looking at questions too. He said, Nico, you want this moral movement, but you don't think we should have a moral leader. Make that make sense. Okay, and that's a good question. But how do you define morals? Because Alamo Talk and other people on the left are advocating a sense of ideas. Dare I label them morals? How do you treat your neighbor? Virtue. How are you going to treat your neighbor? What's the definition of good and evil? Bad and good, all that other stuff. So that's what I mean by moral compass. Now, my morals are influenced by a Christian worldview, a biblical worldview, and I can defend that. But I'm not looking for a moral leader. I'm looking for a leader that has a good definition of morals, not a moral leader. There's a difference. Because Biden and Harris are establishing morals in our country, are they not? I mean,
Yes.
boys competing against women, men and women not knowing, changing the definition of dictionary. I mean, these are morals, how we're treating people at the border. And I'm not saying let them all in. I mean, they're being treated worse, by the way. There's a humanitarian crisis down there. How we treat our neighbor, what we tell people about what they can say and not say, how they can talk and not talk, who they can gather around, what can they do with their business, how you think, what you say, all that. Those are moral claims you're making. What we think about life, what we think about abortion, that's a moral claim too. We got to talk about that. We can't avoid it. Republicans avoid that stuff. And there's a logic, and we can talk about that if you want, by the way. Because I start with my secular argument when I defend life, not my Christian one, by the way. If you've heard me, I don't know if you have. We can talk about that if you want to. But so I don't think there's a dichotomy there, Alamo Talk. I think it's real simple to me. Everyone's advocating a moral guide, a moral compass. I always call it a moral compass. What's right and wrong and where we're going to lead this country. Now, I'm not looking for someone to set the standard. I'm looking for someone to reflect it. There's a difference. Right? The leader in the country should be reflecting what the country already believes. I leave it up to us as a society, to churches, to whatever else, to set that compass. But we don't look to the church anymore. The church and the Christian movement has lost that influence. And now we become closet Christians, believe it or not. And you have to whisper that you're a Christ follower instead of be proud of it. It's unfortunate. So I don't think there's a problem there.
So
Alamo,
I would come back to policies again. In those 4 years, I would ask, name one policy that you felt was immoral and defend that. I mean, again, we have a guy who's been in office for 4 years. Pick a topic. At the border, foreign policy, healthcare, economics, inflation. Pick one. Name a policy and explain why it was immoral.
Well, you have to. Your definition of morals matter.
Well,
Because people-
morality concerns itself with good and evil.
No, I know.
Those are
but
abstract.
the person's definitions of good and evil are going to matter. Because someone may think that shutting you up if you're giving misinformation is moral, is good. And I don't think. I think you should speak. I mean, I think you should talk and make yourself look stupid or good. And then look, how are we going to know if we have good or bad ideas if we're not allowed to share them? If Karen has an idea and I have a conflicting idea, but I'm not allowed to speak, well, how do you know her idea is good? You only know her idea is good because my stupid ass opened my mouth and I shared my bad idea. And so then your idea sucks.
Yeah, well said. You stole my thunder. But that's exactly right. Moral, good and evil is abstract and it's theoretical. It's not until you get in the weeds. Policy, conduct, behavior that
Well,
you
that's
can make
the
sense of.
application of it. That's the application of these morals.
There's
right?
there's no way to frame a conversation. Well, it's good and evil. What does that even mean? That's why I said the man's been in office for 4 years. I can't think of anything he didn't touch during those 4 years because he was a busy guy, and so I mean when he wasn't fighting lawfare. So what did he do that was immoral? And then we'll find out what that person actually means by good and evil. And that's my challenge to Alamo Talk. Let's see if he types fast.
But how are we doing out here? Who's got a question? TG?
TG, welcome,
you stay
brother.
here.
Thank you for having me. I just had a question. I don't know, you guys were going to touch on it. I don't know if you did, but can y'all address the Puerto Rico island of garbage
yeah.
comment?
Yeah, first of all, that's an easy one. I mean, it's a simple one, whether it's easy or not. So I thought it was poor choice to bring a roast comedian to that venue. I mean, Don Rickles did it to Ronald Reagan. You should watch it, by the way. He was a beast. Don Rickles was the best. But but he was a known name. People knew that. I didn't even know who this dude was. I mean, he was actually
Tony Hinchcliffe.
Well, I don't know who the hell he is.
He's an
but
insult comic. That's
I
all
got
we
it.
know,
Okay,
right?
but I'm saying he wasn't.
You've never
known.
heard of him.
He looks like just some prick walks in a room. Not that he's in. Oh, that's Tony Hitchell, whatever. So, all I'm saying is that was poor choice to bring him in my opinion. But listen to what he said. Hey, he's in the garbage. He took a shot at Puerto Rico, not Puerto Ricans.
I heard there's a floating pile of garbage
Yeah,
out
it's
in the
called
ocean.
Puerto
It's called
Rico.
Puerto Rico. Okay.
Okay, but
And don't they have a garbage problem?
they do. So
They do.
Look, under any other setting, it would be funny because then we talked about it, George and I think, on the show it was pre-taped, and Karen, and we pulled it up because I said, "Show me George Lopez." George Lopez, he made his bones on making fun of Mexican families, right? I mean, I couldn't stop laughing. I used to go to the San Antonio Comedy Club downtown at River Center to watch George Lopez before, and I couldn't hold my cheeks down. I was laughing so hard because he's making fun of my mom's mom, and our South Side culture and family back then. I was laughing my ass off, and then so he's at this rally for Harris, and he says, "You're gonna build a wall, but don't leave all the material because Mexicans, and then he walked. Okay, so you didn't. Now you took a shot at Mexicans, not Mexico, but that's okay." See my point? I mean, this false, fake outrage, but again, we have to be shrewd as a snake and innocent as a dove. As it says in the movie 300, I always use an example before they go out, the Spartans go out. He goes, "Take everything and give nothing." We've got to be careful because of the environment we're in. We know we're not on an even playing field. We know that the criticism is only one way. So you have him, George Lopez, making fun of Mexicans. And by the way, I laughed at that joke too because it was funny. I mean, so he's making fun of Mexicans, and he made his bones on it. But this guy, Tony, talks about Puerto Rico having a garbage problem because they do. I got it. The timing was off, but the joke was really a nothing. It was a nothing burger to me. It was funny, but it could have been wiser. Does that answer your question, TG?
Do we have questions? Do we have a question?
Everyone up here up
Because
front?
when you don't, I have a question. Here's a question up here. And tell me if I need to go down there, I will.
No, you're good. Why do you want to get away from us? Does George stink?
Hey, thank
about
you
it.
so
Think
much,
about it.
guys. So you were talking about goodwill, and I was listening to a conversation you were having, Nico, about polarization, right? I've been guilty of being a keyboard warrior, you know.
Thanks
But,
for your honesty, though. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I mean, if that's what it takes, and that's my question, how do we raise the standard, right? Do we expect our leaders to depolarize, or is it something that's got to be from the bottom up? And what do you think that looks like?
I think we bookend it. I mean, I think we do it this way, right? I mean, I know Reagan thought of the trickle-down theory, and I thought so. But George Soros and other people got so successful at what they did, they started from the bottom up. They weren't winning national. I mean, Obama did, but Obama wasn't as open about. If you listen to Obama in 08, he's Republican. Listen to Obama in 08. Listen to his speeches. Go back. It's all on video. I mean, I always bring up Bill Clinton in 1995 during the State of the Union address. He says, a Democrat president says the greatest threat to this country is illegal immigration. And tell me a Democrat that's saying that today. Well, that's an idea that was advocated by a Democrat president. So George Soros started from the bottom up. He started winning DA races. He started winning state house races. He started winning city council races and all this other stuff. And worked, he goes, I'm going to cut from the bottom up. And it was effective. And then it started metastasizing and it came from the top down as well. I think it needs to be from both. I think it starts with us first. And we're the ones that vote people in office. And I think we should choose wisely. And I'm just I'm a raw guy. I love J.D. Vance on Joe Rogan, and they're talking about cussing, and he's just being himself. And I just think people relate. I'm not saying.
I finally got to watch that.
Did you watch it?
Right. You're
Wasn't
so
it?
right. It
J-
was awesome.
JD did a great job. It was a better interview than Joe Rogan's with Trump, in my opinion. Trump's was fine, but JD's was better. JD's the future. I mean, and I think people can relate to that. What's wrong? You okay? Oh yeah. But he is a heartbeat away. So I think it's both. So I think your question is, should we expect that from the top to trickle down? I think it's up to us to put the right people at the top to trickle it down and to set the example, not to be the moral leader, but to be the moral reflector. And they're reflecting us as a people.
I would add that I think we got to get back to the American experiment. It comes from the citizen. Look, when the Puerto Rico thing happened, within minutes, you had droves of Puerto Ricans across the country cutting their own videos to say, he's right.
Yeah. Seriously.
He's right. And it's
Yeah.
like, what's the big deal? Yeah,
Yeah.
what about Lopez? So, and that's the way it should work. Citizens are stepping out now. There's a boldness. Nico's right. It's all of a sudden real popular to be a rebel. But there's an empowerment. I hate using that word because it's, they have the franchise on that word apparently. But there's a boldness. It's palpable. And I think it needs to come from the culture. I do. I happen to believe that it's the parent that shows up, and we've talked a lot about this, the parent that shows up at school board meetings. We have right now, and Gina, are you here? And I thanked this precious lady right over here. She's an election worker. Can I call you?
Whoa,
Can I call you that?
Yay! Awesome.
I'm going to call you that. So we've got something going on right now for those of you who are almost paralyzed in fear that they'll cheat their way to a victory. There's things that we're doing, and I know it's on the back of everybody's mind. I know that because you guys are hearing really good news about Trump, and everybody's wondering, does it matter? And the answer is yes, it does matter, and here's why. Because numbers matter. We are doing things, we talk about this all the time, that we just simply didn't do in 2020. It's not that we were doing the wrong things in 2020, we weren't even present. And so under the leadership of lawyer hawks like Mark Elias, and this was a national movement, and under the umbrella of COVID hysteria, you remember that, and this affected everybody, they were able to literally circumvent legislatures across the country in the name of COVID, in the name of safetyism, that precious cultic religion of safetyism. And so through the courts, they ran roughshod over legislative electoral law. Okay, so they set new rules for the game. And I want you to know that Michael Whatley, the chairman of the RNC, and Laura Trump have reversed those gains significantly. 230,000 workers across the country that we didn't have before.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And 135 lawsuits that they have filed proactively because our legal system is not set up to address issues after the fact. A judge is not going to say, sure, I'll decertify those votes. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
All of this is proactive now. This is the citizenry. This isn't a politician who's doing this. So I don't think the answer ultimately is just that. Nico's right. It's got to be bookended. But then, governments are instituted among men, right? By whom? By the consent of the governed. Ultimately, it's got to be the culture, and I see some really hopeful signs of that.
So, another question, and then Alamo talk as a follow-up. It's an economic one for you, George, so we'll get there in a second. But let's do ones from the audience here.
Hi.
Hi.
I came across you guys by accident. A friend was watching and live streamed it, and so I have been listening to you guys for a while. My question is really about, do you think once the election is over that we're ever going to get to a place where Republicans and Democrats, or whatever you believe in, can live the way we did before? Where, I miss the days of, hey, let's have a discussion about it, and we still walk away and we're still friends. Now I've been called, I was called a race traitor because I married a white man. So obviously, I'm a white supremacist sympathizer.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's not, I'm sorry you go through that, but that's not, I don't think that's the norm on the Dem side.
Yeah.
I don't. I have to be fair. I don't think it is. I think you have, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think there's a progressive communistic movement that has taken over. When I was DA, I saw it coming. I was at the Northwest Democrats. Is that the one that on Luby's, the one off of Huebner? I was just giving an update. I didn't have an opponent. I wasn't doing anything. I just wanted to be a person of the people. So I went to go, and I went to speak to the Tea Party, by the way, as well. I was going everywhere. Whoever asked me, I'd go. And I remember this guy was there, and he goes, I'm from the whatever socialistic democratic something, and we're here for a hostile takeover of the Democrat Party. And whoever was leading the blue hair, leading the deal was like, okay, next. And I'm looking at my notes, and I'm talking to Chris Cox, who worked with me at the time. I said the F word. I said, what the F did he say? and he goes, I don't know. I was like, did he say it's a hostile takeover of the Democrat Party? And he goes, I think so. And I looked around. I could see everybody was uncomfortable. And I looked at that dude, and I said, whatever. So I give my presentation, and I do a Q&A like we're doing now. And he goes, what do you think about pedophilia? I think it's sick. What do you mean what I think about pedophilia? And he's like, well, there's a movement they want to legalize it. I go, not in Bexar County. Not as long as I'm DA. You want to vote me out, do what you want. And then he said, no, and he goes, and it's a sexual orientation. Before it became mainstream, this prick says it. And I just came, I wasn't talking about the whole, if you get consent from your guardian to marry and you're a year under and you're going to the army. I gave him the legal answer, right? And Judge Mary was in the crowd too, and he's looking at me like, who the hell is this dude? And so I answered his question, but then I walked away and I said, where are my kids? I said, holy shit, man, something's changing. I told that to Chris on the way out. I said, there's something changing. And I saw the fear. I mean, that audience should have said, you came here to do what? You came to the wrong place. Get the hell out of here. You're not taking over anything. But everyone was silent. And so I always give the example of the malicious person is trying to screw you over. The weak person is not trying to screw you over, but they're so weak that they'll let the malicious person screw you over. What's the end result? You get screwed over. So the weak and the malicious end up giving you the same result. And that's why. So I think there's a lot of weak people, unfortunately. And if we can empower them, there's that word again. If we can encourage them, if we can embrace them and welcome them, truly be inclusive, that the new Republican Party really is. And when you have all kinds of ethnicities, poor, rich, in between, even people that don't agree on everything. That's why the old school Republican used to irritate me. Oh, you and Mark haven't been Republicans long enough. I was like, I don't give a shit what you say. I go, my values are this. I'll put my values against yours for decades, by the way. Let's talk about that. But not you sitting at home and like, oh, we all look at the same. I mean, I can't stand that crap. I mean, when I first started coming around, got tattoos, and I mean, the Republican Party, but there's something that girds us together, this idea of liberty, of free thinking, of free speech, right? Of traditional family value. That's something that we're not going to compromise, but even though I know there's people that live out the gay lifestyle that are socially, economically conservative, and they consider themselves Republican. But we include them. We'll disagree on what we disagree on, but we still include them, right? But there has to be something that's a foundation for us. So I am hopeful. I'm an idealist because I'm a Christian, but I'm also a realist that it's going to be a tough battle. And you just have to you have to gird up and have some perseverance. But we only lose when we stop fighting. And so I'll keep fighting until the Lord calls me home. But do you want to ask that question at Alamo Talk, or did you want to say something, or someone else has? Oh, there's another question.
Oh, that's what I was showing you.
What did Alamo Talk say?
Well, let's ask a question here, and then we'll go to his. It's an economic question.
Okay.
So, softball question for all three of you, and all the ladies and all the husbands in here. Who among you who would have a child in the womb would say, I don't want that child to live? Where would any of us be? Nico and Karen and George are the three positives up on the stage, but we're all positive. And I'm not discounting rape and incest and things of that nature. But think where we would be as a nation and as a people if we said indiscriminate abortions are available.
Well, okay. What's your name, sir?
David?
Dave, may I call you David?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, David. Thank you for being here. So he asked the question, because I think Republicans don't handle that question well. And it's not, here's the problem. If I was on Joe Rogan, I'd give you the same answer, because he talked about it with JD. And I did think JD, he can do better on this answer. It's not a soundbite. You have to start with, it's not a soundbite answer. It's just not. And you have people that really hold a different belief than we do. They really do. And they're not doing it from an evil, malicious point of view. They just have a different view. And so I've never agreed with the whole, you're murderers. I mean, shit, I didn't know I was a murderer. Thank you. I'm going to change my ways. Who does that? No one does that. I thought that was a horrible strategy. And so what I would tell people is like, okay, let's just talk. I'm going to give you my secular argument of why I'm pro-life. I'm going to start with my secular. Let me just, for 1 second, I'm going to shelf my Christian faith. Do you believe it's a child in the woman's womb? They're going to give you an answer. Yeah. Well, I mean, biologically, it's a child. There's a heartbeat. We know it's got its own DNA. It's a zygote. When the sperm and the egg come together, it doesn't need any more DNA material from either parent. It's its own DNA structure. That's number one. And then biologically, we know that. There's a baby in there because we have sonograms. During Roe v. Wade, we did not have sonograms. I go, so okay, I agree with you, by the way, that it's a baby. And if they don't say it's a baby, then you know you're in a very different discussion, right? They have to, it's a baby, it's a child in there. But then they talk about viability, and that's a separate issue. And then I say, okay, so I agree with you, it's a child, but I also agree with the penal code. and you guys have heard me say this, the penal code in Texas, for sure, in most states, if you murder a woman that's pregnant, and you always ask the person, why are you facing the death penalty? Why does the justice system come in and say, you can pay the highest price in our justice system, death? We, the system, through the people, can take your life from you if you murder a pregnant woman. Why? Most people say because you've murdered two people, which is still a great answer. And it's a reason why you can get the death penalty, by the way, if you murder two people during the same incident, two people or more. But the penal code is even more specific than that. The penal code identifies a child under 10 years old in the mommy's womb. So, I'm not even talking about the Bible yet. If I agree with the penal code, and if I agree, the penal code says it's a child, not me, but if I agree with the penal code, then I have a very serious question I have to ask myself. Is there ever a legitimate or good reason to end the life of an innocent child? Because the penal code carves out the mom's decision and a medical professional acting on the mom's wishes. The penal code carves out abortion. No other reason. I prosecuted women for having a baby in a trash can, and then walking away. Or someone that stabbed a woman and then the baby died. And I don't know any pro-choice advocates that are trying to change state legislature and change the capital murder code. I've never seen one. Why wouldn't you do that? Why, unless you think it's a child, but so if it's a child, but then you're making an argument of convenience as a whole. Now, it doesn't. I'm not trying to downplay rape. Rape is evil. But for me, now you're asking me, I'm pretending I'm on Joe Rogan. Can you be Joe David for a second? So Joe, I'm not discounting it, but for me as a man who's biblically minded and I see the world the way Christ tells me to, and I've lived it out. Romans 8:28 says that God can work all things out for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So, and I've lived that out. So my brother was murdered and taken from us on August 15th, 1996 at 2:14 in the morning. And so, okay, so did God use my brother's murder? Yes. I can't speak for my brother Mark, who's here, and my mom or my pop, but I would not change my brother's murder. And that freaks people out because I've seen how God, now the first 10 years I was a maniac, literally. But after, I wouldn't change it because if you change it, you change everything. So are we saying, as a Christian, saying that God can't use something as evil as rape? Evil is rape. That's that way. Last part. We lose the perspective of the child. And I'm going to leave this point. And this point, Mark, my brother Mark was really moved by this when him and I talked about this. If the child could talk, what would the child say? Because we know through sonogram abortions that the child can feel pain. We know that the child actually kicks to stop himself from being dismembered. You're dismembering a child. You're not giving some magic pill and the baby goes to sleep. I mean, you're pulling the body parts apart. I mean, that's reality. My wife, when she was younger in Mexico, she went to school, and they actually saw the effects of an abortion to them very young. Like, you saw the pile of body parts. And in Planned Parenthood, they count body parts. You know that if it's a successful abortion. Torso, arms, legs, head, okay, abortion's complete. That's reality. I'm not making that up. It's not being hyperbolic. That's reality. So if the child could talk, what would the child say? And then I bring people to the example of an evil bitch by the name of Andrea Yates. There's no other way to say it. She was evil out of Houston. Do you know who I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? This is a woman that was convicted of murdering, I think 4 or 5 of her boys. And what testimony came out in the transcript was that she drowned them, by the way. She drowned one of them, drowned the second one. And then she got to the 5-year-old, and either she was tired, she was wet, obviously, so slippery, and the kid was just fighting away. She's drowning her son, and he's pushing back on her. And he looks up at her and says, "I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm sorry." Like, what did I do? And then she drowns him. So if the baby could talk, if the child, the penal code said it's a child. I haven't even mentioned my Bible yet. If the child could talk, would the child say, "Mommy, I'm sorry. But you don't understand. But Mommy, I'm sorry. What did I do? But Mommy, I'm." And so that's how I look at it. Now, I happen to believe the way God does. Jeremiah 1:5 says that I knew you in your mother's womb before you were born. Psalm 139 says that I knit you together and wove you together in your mommy's womb. And then, of course, Proverbs 6:16 says that God hates the spilling of innocent blood, and there's a child in there and they did nothing wrong and they're innocent. and God hates it, so I'm supposed to hate it because I'm a Christ follower. So I merge my faith to the reality of what this is, and I try to reason it. And even Roe v. Wade says that if we could establish personhood, if at any point you can establish personhood, then your right to privacy vanishes. And that's Roe v. Wade. I would take people back to Roe v. Wade that people want to implement, by the way. You could use Roe v. Wade to argue against abortion. Now, do I think that we should not have some exceptions for rape and incest because the country's not there yet? Yes. The mommy's safety is always paramount. I mean, it really is, even over the child. I believe that. And I can stand before the Lord and say, Lord, I chose life over life. I did. And I can, biblically, I can defend that. But logically, and I think that we have to look at it practically. I don't think that people that say, we've allowed abortion to get here, due date abortions and all the other stuff. You're not going to go back to zero. I just think that's crappy logic. Strategy. So we have to, safe and rare, use the Democrats' words against them, and we start working on people's hearts and minds that will ultimately affect our laws.
Well said. I've been in tons of abortion discussions, most of them involuntary, until I realized, let's keep talking about the life of the child. I always bring it back to that, because then it changes. It's no longer a political matter. It's not a political football. And Nico said it right, that if you go back to the original decision in 1973, and there's two of them, there's Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, and you go back to them and you look at the language and how they define it as a potential human being. The whole case rests on the notion that it's a potential human being. And so I thought to myself, if we can come back to the status of the unborn and start there, then we can bring clarity to the discussion. Because if this is in fact a human being, and of course demonstrably and objectively and biologically it is, then the whole thing falls apart. And the language specifically is that, in their view, because it's a potential human being, that a woman's right to privacy prevails against the government's interest in regulating abortion. But if in fact it is no longer a potential human being, and it is a human being, and the right of personhood is established because the two are attached, then the appellant's case falls apart. And the way Nico and I have said it is, you don't have a right to privately murder somebody. So the woman's right to privacy isn't going to trump protections for life in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. So if we can keep coming back to that, because even the court struggled with that. It's bizarre that they struggled with it. When politics enter the system, that's the problem. But even the court was saying, if this is a human being, and of course, who's going to sit there and say it's not a human being? Yes, there are people who make that argument, that it's not a human being, it's subhuman. That's a whole... The pro-abortion culture right now argues that it's a subhuman. It's not human.
George, let's get to this
so
question.
we got to win that argument.
Yeah. Do you have a question? I'm going to do one question. So, George, this is from Alamo Talk. We've got an economy with a 4% unemployment rate and a per-person GDP of $85,000. That's an economy that's already great. What more do you want?
Well, the premise is false, it seems to me. A 4%, here's the problem with the unemployment rate calculations. The problem with the unemployment calculations and unemployment, it really measures the level of the labor rate, the labor participation rate. And the reality is that the calculation is flawed. It doesn't take into account a very low labor participation rate right now. So the numbers are fudged with all due respect, and they have been for many, many years. Cover your ears, but I call absolute bullshit. If you look at the calculation, it doesn't take into account the number of people who aren't even looking for work because they've given up. And the people who are employed, you and I think were chatting about this 6 months ago, we've got people that are working 2, 3, 4 jobs. That's not an overstatement because jobs just simply aren't paying as much. It's a Census Bureau reality that revenue's down and that wages are down. And so the number's flawed. If you actually look and put in accurate labor participation rates, your unemployment rate's going to be grotesque. It's going to be in the double digits. But they're not going to change the calculation now. It's terrible politically, and nobody wants to have that discussion. I think it's unfortunate. By the way, Trump does want to have that discussion, but he's also talked out both sides of his mouth because he quotes the same numbers when they favor him. So setting that aside, with regard to the GDP, who gives a crap? $85,000 GDP, we're not keeping most of it. So what? Things are demonstrably more expensive. Have you not heard of the word inflation and the problem that it is?
20%.
So an $85,000, And by the way, it's not $85,000.
Got it.
It's more like $66,000, and you're not keeping most of it. So nice try, bud.
Yeah.
But
One more question. I mean, because
math doesn't work that way.
We're winding down now, but then the question from the audience. Last month, 12,000 jobs.
Oh, yeah.
No, but
Yeah, it was-
and then eventually 2 or 3 months later, they
correct
adjust
them.
it downward. Yeah, again. Right.
George, do you have a question?
Musk will bring to the when we win the election, hopefully.
Elon Musk, I think he's a great addition. I mean, look, I mean, you got Elon Musk. I just read this yesterday. Yes, I read, George. And so I'm known to watch videos, and he's the reader.
Cliff
so-
notes.
So it was Elon Musk that went to get those astronauts that were stuck in space. It wasn't even the government. And then I just think he's going to bring I mean, the fact that Trump is open-minded to having Bobby Kennedy, which is huge. I know Bobby. I've advocated with him in D.C. He's a genuine dude. I don't agree with him on everything, but that guy has been through hell with his family, what he's gone through. He is genuine. He's intelligent. And him working on back to our children, our health, and the health of our country is going to be wonderful. But I think Elon's going to bring just a different aspect as a business person and just a crazy smart dude. And
He
I
really is.
hope he's involved. Elon Musk's journey is interesting.
Yeah.
You know why he's in this fight, right? Because he lost his son. I saw him do an interview about 2 months ago, and I had no idea that he goes, I was told that I wasn't being loving if I didn't let my son transition. He lost his son to transitioning. He goes, he'll never be, I mean, he's lost his son. I don't know how hard that is for his son to hear that now, but I'm curious about the personal side of it, even though I think he's open to faith. And it's amazing what's going on, I think. There's a lot of opportunity out there. But because I asked, I go, why does this dude give a crap, man? He's a billionaire, make more money. You're not going to live the life. Like Mark Cuban, he's never going to live the life that he's advocating for. J-Lo, she's not going to, I won't say J-Ho. J-Lo, she's not going to live the life that she's advocating. I mean, none of these hypocrites are. George Clooney, he's not going to live the life that George Lopez, they're not anymore. He's not going to live the life. But why is Elon Musk doing? And I knew there had to be something. It didn't get any more personal than your children. And so he is dead set on fighting this progressive, woke, evil cult. So I think he's going to be a huge asset.
I think that's right. I think that's the right answer. I do have my skepticisms because there's strong points of agreement. And he's been a gift to the
A
conservative movement.
gift, man, golly.
Because the sociological madness of the left has come home to him, and so he's impassioned by it. But let's assume he actually takes some sort of role of leadership in the administration. I think you're going to see pretty significant points of disagreement. Remember, Elon Musk's wealth was because of giant government subsidies of the electric vehicle industry, right? And he's made a boatload amount of money, I mean, to say the least, the richest man on earth. So I wonder because he is all in on the climate crisis. Trump is not. So I think there's significant disagreements on that. And then I think also in terms of deregulation. I mean, Trump is a deregulation hound. And I wonder what Musk's philosophy would be with regard to environmental regulations. It's an interesting question.
Wrap it up.
So
Hey, I don't know if you know what a seventh inning stretch is, but I think we need one. We need to stand up and stretch.
No,
If
we're
anybody
good.
wants to, please.
No,
because
we got to wrap up anyway.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up. And I was going to ask if you guys are going to do a live broadcast on election night, because the question that I want to ask is going to take too long and my legs hurt. But I need to know what I should be watching for when it comes to the Electoral College, numbers, and
Yep.
so that I won't be like throwing up and in the fetal position.
if I'll give a short answer. If the Real Clear Politics is the best of the worst, polling's been a disaster really since 2016. And I mean, Trump changed everything. He just did, as you know. But the Real Clear Politics average is an aggregation of multiple reputable polls. And right now, if it holds, Trump's ahead in 5 of the 7 battleground states. If it holds as it is now, if that trend holds, Trump will win. I mean, if you add it all up, it'll be at about 312 electoral votes, and she'll be in the basement, no pun intended.
Does he have to win certain ones?
If he wins Pennsylvania is a big one.
Yeah, I think it's feasible. It's reasonable that he'll take
But he
Pennsylvania.
doesn't have to win it.
It looks really good in North Carolina. Nico and I were chatting a few days ago. She's pulled her campaign apparatus out of North Carolina, all of it, and she's coming to Texas instead. I don't know who gave her that advice, but so I think that says a lot. It's what you guys know this better than I do. It's what politicians do and what they don't do, and she's really underwater in Pennsylvania. I think the Al Smith dinner really hurt. I'm convinced of that. You saw the numbers go down. The Catholic vote has just plummeted where she's concerned. So I think Pennsylvania is looking really, really good for Trump. There have been some successful lawsuits with regard to ballot integrity that have gone our way. In fact, the majority of the 135 lawsuits have gone our way. Lawsuits in Virginia have gone our way in terms of our ability to purge the voter rolls. I mean, there's just a lot of really shady dealings, and we've been very successful. I'll say this. University of Florida, close of business October 31st. They printed their findings of how voting's going right now. I think it's the most reliable report out there. 60 million votes.
63, I heard,
as of October 31st, close of business. And they said that it was a 32 million vote to 28 split. In other words, 32 million people are voting in person relative to 28 mail-in. And there's no question the Republicans are ahead on the early voting in person. Nico was asking this about these states break down by party affiliation. There's only about 24 states that report by party affiliation. And in those states, Republicans are ahead in the early in-person voting. They're not ahead on the mail-in votes. I know it doesn't surprise anybody. But they're ahead in the early in-person voting. And they're voting a lot more than they were in I don't even care about 2020. I'm talking about 2016 because 2020 was a disaster. But in 2016, so there's a lot of really positive signs for the GOP. I hope it stays that way, and it's not just 1 or 2 days. If it stays this way, I think we have every reason to be optimistic.
It's only one more day. I mean, so that's all we got, but that's it. But look, we wanted to thank you guys. This was the first time we did it. People have been talking about it.
Thank you.
But I wanted to, thank Eric King and Prestige Motorsports for giving this venue.
Awesome. Thank you.
For all of them here at Prestige Motorsports. George's family was here, his wife and his children. My wife and our children are here. George's parents are here. My parents are here to support us. So thank you for that, guys. God bless you guys. We'll do this again if there's Angel. What? Monday? Oh, yeah, thank you. Saulo and Jeff and all of his crew. Sorry, man. Thank you. That's my wife here. She's like, what? What? Sorry, no, we couldn't have done it. Look at the production. And Saulo's taking our production up to a different level. I mean, from moving from Karen's iPhone, and she had a cricket phone back then. It sucked. But
I tried.
And if you guys want this again, let us know. We're happy to do it. I think it'd be good to do this every once in a while. God bless you guys and encourage people to vote. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you.